So we return to open session. Can I have everyone stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have to vote on that? Okay, at this time, can we have a motion to appoint the student member to the board?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Congratulations, it's official.
For everyone, this is Patrick Iso. He's the new student representative to the Board of Education. So there is no agenda modifications. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passed. The upcoming events, September 5th, first day of school. The next board meeting will be September 13th. And I'll start off Friday. Greer and I attended the first meeting for the bus drivers. I will say it's quite a lively group. I was quite pleased, and it seems like it's kind of nice to see all these bus drivers. They like to have fun with each other. And I would say they're a highly motivated group. So I was quite pleased to be there. Second thing, I went to Camp Invention and was really thrilled to see all our kids. It was at Netherwood, and their little iRobot cars, their robot dogs, and all of this funded by a grant. And the teachers and the helpers were so enthused. They had to turn away kids because they had so many people trying to get in. They hope that one day they will be able to expand this, because they only got to accept, so about 30%, 25% of applicants?
I don't know I don't want to be quoted on the percentage. There were 111 kids. That sounds about, the percentage
said it was about
out of our
400
total
applied.
elementary, yeah.
400 applied, and we only had positions for 110.
400 applied, okay.
Yeah.
You had more data than I did, Colin.
So anybody else have any pride?
Just fall sports have started their pre-season, not competition, and all our other summer programs were very smooth this year. We had our Summer Bridge, our Haviland Middle School program, and the program at the high school. So smooth programs all summer. The last one ended last week, and then we had Camp Invention. So it's a good summer, a full summer.
Is there anything else in the superintendent's report?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on, on North Park Elementary. As I reported to the board, we had some teachers come in mid-August, and as you know, the buildings are closed up for quite a while, and the air isn't quite flowing, so there was some signs of mold. The building principal immediately contacted the director of facilities, and by the very next day we were inviting in our inspector, our certified mold inspector, who was there the very next day. His recommendation, and I'll ask Elliot to fill in any gaps, his recommendation was that the mold growing in that environment at this time of year was normal, if you will. And again, he is a certified mold inspector. His recommendation was to do deep cleaning. We mobilized our facilities team to begin immediately to do a deep cleaning. The concern level was high. There were some close-up shots circulating that looked pretty intimidating, but they were a close-up of something like that, so it filled the screen. But again, we never not respond to evidence of mold, and we mobilize immediately. Although the certified mold inspector recommended deep cleaning, we went back to him and said we'd like the full battery of testing. As you know, at North Park, we have a moisture issue, and we have done several tests in the past on air quality and testing of mold. That testing is being done on Monday. As soon as we get the results, we share them publicly. So again, within less than 24 hours, we responded immediately by bringing in the person who is certified to assess and recommend the course of action, and we are going above and beyond the course of action. We are in communication with Lynette constantly, and knowing that there is still maybe some growing concern, we're kicking around when to invite parents in to just come in. We're going to reach out to the our certified inspector to see when he's available so that he can be on hand to answer some questions. So we're trying to put that together and see if we can put it together before school opens. Okay.
This time, we'll have the enrollment update.
Okay. I'm ready for that. Let me bring my hard copy. All right. I did not turn the clicker on. Okay. Unless I turn the on button, I won't be able to push the buttons. Okay. Maybe it was on. Oof, good. Battery's not dead. This is the annual enrollment report. I'll start by saying that the official enrollment date is considered BEDS Day, the Basic Educational Data System, and that is done in October because there can be a lot of movement in the month of August. And in fact, when these data were collected, in August I have 3,400 students. That was August 3rd. We're now at August 23rd, and there's 32 students. So again, I'm reporting in August, but our official BEDS Day is in October, so we'll see a little movement. I put it up, I prepared this on August 3rd, so I didn't update that slide today. We were in our administrative retreat, and but I wanted to have the accurate number for today, and I got that from Josephine today. The point here is that even between June of last year, we had 3,493, and even as of today, we're 67 less students, and 496 over since 2008. Again, you'll see the trajectory is still declining enrollment at a pretty rapid rate. I reported, this is the live birth data. Again, we saw a little slight trend in 2014 to move the needle up again. We update this periodically. It was good news to see the 2014. We'll be getting the 2015 information shortly. That's one of the points of data taken into consideration when you do long-range planning and they look at tenure. This is a repeat slide with some updated numbers as of August 3rd when I did this. But for a while, we were losing approximately 97 students per year for several years, and then we saw that we were down to about an average of 47 students in the years 2016-17. If our data holds true through to October, we're going to be probably higher than that 47. I anticipate maybe somewhere between 57 to 60 students that we've lost between last year and this year. So we are still in declining enrollment on an annual basis. It's not, we're not seeing increasing enrollment. And it was 94 as of August 3rd. Again, it's a little less now. Basically, the net result is the total decrease in enrollment since we closed the school, or since we determined to close the school, is about 490. Again, maybe it'll give or take 10. Not take 10, but it's still pretty high. So since the closing of Hyde Park Elementary, we have lost a considerable amount of students. When I talk to high school students and we do my budget talks, I don't say it's not like we can't find them. They're just not moving in. People aren't having as many children, and as children leave the area, they're not coming back and raising young families here. This is not unique to Hyde Park. This is all across New York State. Technically, we know that all 4 of our elementary schools are running under capacity, but that is an assumption that that we are using currently classrooms, full-size classrooms, to give services such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, and academic intervention services. And since we closed Hyde Park Elementary, we now have 4 additional special education classes. So that takes up space, classroom, not takes up space, but those occupy full-size classrooms. So, and that is a result of our special education department really keep bringing students back to their home school. So instead of sending children out to alternative schools and other placements, we do as much as possible to create programs for our students so that they can stay in their home school district. Basically, there's 81 classrooms for 4 school years. This is last year's slide, but it hasn't changed. And going into next year, we'll need 65 classrooms. This has remained about the same. There's been no change. This was 17 and 18. So last year, if we closed a school, we'd be about 4 classrooms short. It would be a squeeze.
Do those classrooms include the special classes?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. With that said, I think it's time to bring in an agency to actually really run the numbers and conduct the study. This last slide with being 4 classrooms short, that's by my calculation. That's not scientific. That's not looking at some of the other decreased numbers. That's not looking at any of our other potentials for where we could put students. And I think it's time to update and have somebody do the analysis of our capacity, of our enrollment, and give us a more realistic picture of where we are with enrollment and where we may be heading. The last time we did an enrollment study, we hired EduCore, and this time I'm recommending that we actually use the BOCES service. Western Suffolk BOCES They've done several in our area. We get 60% aid back on that, so the going rate to conduct the study is about low 20,000, maybe 20, 21, 22. That was the ballpark when I spoke to them. We were looking at, and we get 60% aid on that, so the net cost is somewhere around the 13,000. I think it's time to look for several reasons. Again, my classroom count is not entirely accurate. It's maybe not the full picture. We are now have lost minimally another 60, 70 students. And I think once we see the numbers and the data, if it warrants and if we want to go in that direction, we could then reconvene the committee to say what are the possibilities. Every time we do this, every year we do this, we know we have to be truthful, we have to talk about this, we have to prepare and look at this so we know that the rumor mill could fly immediately. There are certainly other options a school district our size has, and there are options that other school districts are doing. We can look at the capacity of Haviland Middle School to house 5th grade. We can look at different configurations. There are so many different things that could be looked at if we chose to, based on the professionals in the field that conduct these studies. And we're not there yet, but I think it's time to update our actual capacity and enrollment. We've been postponing this. This is not something we do lightly. We've talked about it for the last 2 years, whether or not we should conduct another study. This is now the 3rd year, and I don't think we should postpone looking at the data. I think we should look at the data professionally and then take it from there. If it was determined that based on the report, we wanted to consider anything, that we had the capacity to move to 3 elementary schools, then it would be up to the board to determine, based on that information, if they wanted to reconvene a committee to look at that. We are following closely the progress of the Bellafield development and the Hudson Heritage projects. They are both talking the first phase hotels, and the second phase possibly housing down the road. When a company comes in, or when the service is provided by Western Suffolk BOCES, they reach out to the county, they get the updated live birth numbers, they find out all of the status of these projects, and they know how to do these projections. There are calculations and analytics that are run that we don't have the capacity to do, and make that type of informed projection based on the status of the project, the economy. So I don't think we should postpone it for the 3rd year in a row. I think we should just have the report done to look at the numbers. And again, at that point, we could determine we're reconvening a committee, we're not reconvening a committee. It's worth exploring, it's not worth exploring. So we're not trying to start rumors, but with close to 500 students less than 2012, it's time to look. I was going to say one other thing. Just lost it. Yes, I wanted to talk about sections, so you know why it's prudent financially for a school district to look at it. We talk about how deep a school is section-wise. So we have school districts that, when they're at full capacity, they have the ability to have 4 classrooms per grade. So for example, you would have at North Park, you would have kindergarten, you have 4 sections of kindergarten, 5 sections of first grade, 4 sections of third grade, etc. To operate a school that has 2 sections, you're coming close to one-room schoolhouse concept. So we right now have 2 elementary schools that are only 2 sections deep. So you have Netherwood and Violet Avenue, that at kindergarten there's 2 sections, at first grade there's 2 sections, all the way straight through kindergarten through 5th grade. When you collapse the sections, so this is why we need somebody to come in and do this study, because it's not about the classrooms. Even this I could do if I wanted to sit down for a really long time and work the numbers. When you collapse the classroom, I just did a quick look at a couple of grade levels. So I looked at, maybe 2nd or 3rd grade throughout the district. And if you had 3 schools and you took all of the 3rd graders, we would still have class sizes of 24 in a couple of the grade levels by moving from 4 to 3. Even when you reduce a school, you still have all the children, and you certainly don't want to close a school and have class sizes of 30 and 32, which also means that you have to look at where the students live in the district and balance it out should you make that move. But if the study reveals that across the board you could manage to have 3 schools with an average of 24 students per grade level, you have to look at that, because we have 2 schools operating with 2 sections each, and if it moves down to 1 section, now the expense is, you have to have the classroom teachers, but as you remember, painfully so, from closing another elementary, the average cost savings is $1 million. We came in at $990,000, because it's the expense of keeping the school heated, open, and staffing the school with all of the staff other than the teachers. So you have one elementary principal, the nurse, the librarian, the custodian, the secretaries. The classroom teachers stay the same, but the actual entire operation outside of the classroom teachers is $1 million. So I am recommending, we did budget for it, we budgeted for it last year as well, but I am recommending we move forward and look at the numbers. And then we'll get the report in the spring, and the board would make a decision at that time. The decision at that time would be whether or not to convene a committee to look at it or leave everything the same. So the timeline would be, we get the numbers, we get them in the spring, there's a presentation made to the board by the person who conducts the study. The board in the spring determines whether or not we put that we just let it rest. The numbers are the numbers, we're happy with where our numbers are, or they make a determination that we convene a committee to look at it the following year and make a recommendation in order to prepare the following year's budget. So that's where we are. So it's not bad news, it's not good news, it's just time to look at the numbers. Not what people want to hear, but we do have an obligation to our taxpayers to look at, are we giving a quality education, and are we being fiscally responsible?
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, do you have anything that correlates the live birth data with the incoming kindergarten registration rate? Is it pretty consistent?
Yeah. In fact, I looked at the projection. Conducted by the last professional study as far as where we would be now 5 years later. Actually, it's a little more than 5 years, and they were pretty much spot on. And I know that one of the factors that they use is that live birth study, and the person who does the analytics would be able to explain the formula that they do. But when I looked at it, actually, they had us at a little bit higher enrollment for kindergarten right now than we actually have. But I think they try, they don't want to lowball it, but they do have a formula, and when I looked at that, they're pretty spot on for the other grade levels, but we're lower in kindergarten than what they projected for this year, for 2017. Sorry, so that is a part of their formula.
So you mentioned a little bit about the idea of looking at, the leveling process, redistricting, in other words. Would you see that, could you see that that might be a solution or an interim solution that would happen with or without a reduction in the number of elementary schools?
If you recall from the last study that we did, the recommendation for how we would divide the students had them more equalized among the remaining schools, and the community outcry resulted in a decision to modify the recommendation. And the result of modifying that recommendation, which was all transparent, was that there were some larger class sizes for a couple of years at North Park Elementary. So we could look at the data. We could also ask the person conducting this study to say, short of closing a school, would it help to look at our boundary lines? Our boundary lines are pretty choppy based on, just decades and decades, not even just the last closing, but decades of, kind of some interesting configurations. I mean, if you really, that's the problem. You ask for a recommendation, and they're going to give you a clinical recommendation, and the clinical recommendation never matches the emotional recommendation. And so we did modify the recommendation last time, and we knew full well that it was going to cause some inequities in class sizes across the board. So it could be that when we could ask them to look through that lens. Most districts don't want to go through the redistricting process unless there's like either severe inequities when it results in no fiscal savings. And we don't see, we've got sporadic inequities that would always continue to exist. We don't have, the situation we had in 2012 was a great disparity in class size between Hyde Park Elementary and the rest of the district, a great disparity.
Is it possible when we order the study, what I'd like to see is some long-term options for us. So right now we know what our enrollment is. We've lost roughly 60 students, this year. I suspect right when they do one of these studies that they're looking at it and they'll project, okay, next year you're looking at, we can take an average of, and we'll guess if you lose 50 students, and in 2 years if you lose another 50, and go down the line, so that when we look at this, we can have a clear idea of a timeline of what we're looking at, based on the numbers that they find.
Yeah, they'll go 10 years out.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Okay, and I would be interested to do both. I mean, not only looking at some data of whether or not we eliminate a school, or or just reconfiguring everybody. Those would be my requests. I guess I don't know how they do the studies.
Yeah. Well, I think some of it is depending on what we ask. If we ask them to look at redistricting, they'll look at redistricting. Is there a better way to do this? Again, you don't need to make a decision, and the regulations on school closing are very strong, that you convene a committee, a community-based committee. So while we could ask them to look at a few things, everything else would be done by the committee using the accurate data. Yeah. But we could say, as part of the study, could you look at our boundary lines and redistricting to see if there's anything there that you'd recommend would make sense?
Yeah, I guess I just want to get more bang for our buck. I want to get the most out of the study as we can, so I want options
Yeah.
for all of us to look at.
Yeah, and I think we need them to look at the middle school as well. That was not looked at last time.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll see you in the spring. Bye. No.
So I want to remind the district, we're not saying we're closing an elementary school, but we are, as a board, doing due diligence on our enrollment and looking to see what our future holds. So let's not all go out there and say we're closing a school, because that's not what we're saying.
Right. It is a
Okay.
requirement that the superintendent reports annually on enrollment, and I think you need the enrollment report that's done through data analysis that is not within the scope of what I do, so it's just a professional study. This is what we value. Sorry, this is how we always end this each year. This is why we stay ahead of the curve. Sorry, I guess I wasn't finished, but these, you've seen these slides before. This is part of what we put into it, private parochial, and ending with doing what is best for our students. I hope that's the last one. Yes.
At this time, we'll have a presentation on the tax levy calculation rates from Linda Steinberg.
Good evening. First. So the reason that we're talking about the tax levy and the tax rate calculation is that there's a resolution on tonight's agenda to approve the levy and to issue the warrants to the tax collectors. So a lot of the information that I have in the presentation, we've been over before, and I'm happy to get into as much detail as the board would like, but I actually put more information in this presentation for the public because I add this presentation to the website every year. So first of all, I'd just like to go over the factors that affect the school tax rates. There are 3 factors that affect the tax rates, but the school district only controls one, and that's the tax levy. So the tax levy is determined during the budget season. It's part of the budget that the board approves in April and the voters approve in May. The other 2 factors are the assessed values of all the properties from the towns and the equalization rate that comes from the state. That information is not available to us until August. And that's actually the reason why we have the presentation on the same night that we ask you to approve the resolutions. So it's important to say that equalization rates are really necessary because our school district has 5 towns, and all 5 towns have different methods for assessing the properties. They all have different assessors, and they all have their assessments at different times too. They don't do it every year. So the state has put this method as a factor for the tax rates in order to make the tax levy be spread out amongst the 5 towns in the most fair method, the most fair way. Basically, so if New York State sets the equalization rate at 100, they're saying that they agree that that town's assessment is fair value. If they set the assessment at above 100, they would be saying that the assessor has assessed those properties too high. And if it's below 100, they're stating that the assessments are too low, that they don't match the fair market value. So like I said, the tax levy is determined by the board every year because it's part of the budget. Our tax levy for 2018-19 is $60.1 million. That was approved in the budget. However, when we set the levy tonight, we have to subtract out the omitted taxes from last year. The county will be paying us $19,131. If we include that in the levy that we assess and have the tax collectors collect, we're actually getting that money twice and we can't double dip. So the actual tax levy that we are collecting is the $60,146,000. So this spreadsheet, or this table actually shows the calculation for the tax rates. I know this table's a little confusing. I labeled the columns this year, I numbered them, because last year we had a lot of confusion when we were talking about each different column. I'm not going to go through the whole calculation, but I will just summarize what we do. So the first part is to apply the equalization rate, which is in column 5, to the actual assessed value, which is in column 4. That helps us determine the each town's share of the tax levy, and that's in column 8. Then we determine the tax rate, which is the last column, column 9, by dividing the share of tax levy into the assessed values in column 4. And when you look at this, you'll notice that there are 3 towns that have the same tax rate. Those are the towns that are all have 100% equalization rate. The other 2 towns, Hyde Park and Rhinebeck, have tax rates that are higher, and their equalization rates are set below 100. So like I just said, that means that New York State is saying that the assessments in those towns are too low, and that if we left them, if we set the tax rate that's based on the assessed values, they wouldn't be paying their fair share of taxes, and that's according to New York State. And really, another thing I'll point out is the Hyde Park equalization rate has always been below 100 since I've worked here. This year it fell 2 points from 59% to 57%, but Rhinebeck had been at 100 for quite a while, and they fell 8 percentage points to 92%. This is just one of the slides that I like to have because I get a lot of questions about this from the public. Some people like to know how the assessed values change. Here we can see that overall the assessed values in all 5 towns have increased by about 2%, or the 37.9 million. Typically when assessed values increase, our tax rates go down. So if our equalization rates had all stayed the same as last year, all of our tax rates in all of the towns would have decreased. And here we have the tax rates compared this year to last year, as well as the current year's equalization rates. And you can see on here the tax rate increase is different for all the towns. The 3 towns with 100% equalization will all see a decrease in their tax rates. The town of Hyde Park's tax rates are increasing by 2.19%, but Rhinebeck is increasing by 7.31%. Now again, this is mainly attributable to the equalization rates. Because Rhinebeck's equalization rate fell from 100 to 92%, they're seeing the largest increase. And that's why the other towns are seeing less of an increase or even a decrease. So if all the equalization rates stay the same as last year, and if the assessment stayed the same, we would always see our tax rate increase match the tax levy increase. Again, this is information that I like to have here for the taxpayers because I put it online. It's comparing the total tax levy to last year. Our tax levy increase in the budget was 2.53%. That was the maximum amount that we could increase it. But remember, these numbers include the omitted taxes. That's why it is slightly different. And here's information for the taxpayers. New York State issues information for taxpayers on their website. It's a little hard to get to, so I always put it into the presentation. It's just the maximum amount of STAR for this year for both the basic STAR and the enhanced STAR. And it varies from town to town. So the school district itself collects taxes for the towns of from Clinton, Rhinebeck, and Pleasant Valley. We do accept online payments. We've been using an online system for about 5 years now. I think this will be our 6th year. Every year we have more and more people using it. We do encourage that. It's really helpful for people because their taxes are considered paid when they actually log in and initiate the payment, but it does take 2 to 3 days to come out. We've had quite a few people calling us during tax collection in a panic because they forgot to pay their taxes. But if they go online before midnight on the due date, they're considered paid in full by the due date, even though the money doesn't come out for a few days. And I believe the town of Poughkeepsie also collects taxes online, but you would have to go to their website for that. And our tax collection dates will be September 10th through October 9th with no penalty. And then the 2% penalty period starts October 10th and is through November 1st. After November 1st, we send a list to the county of anybody that's unpaid, and people can then pay their taxes directly to the county. And if they don't pay it, by the time the town bills come out in January, it gets reassessed on that bill. So that's all I have for the tax rate calculation, but are there any questions about the equalization rates and assessed value?
Does the state publish the mechanism they use to come up with the equalization rate?
No, and I've called. I've actually called every year. They don't really tell me, and they don't tell me, but it seems to me that it's based on when the most recent assessment by the towns are done, because what they do publish is a list of when each town in the state last had a reassessment. They're a few years behind. Their most recent information is through 2014, but for our 5 towns, the towns that are all assessed at 100% had a townwide reassessment in 2014. The last time Rhinebeck did was 2011, and the last time Hyde Park did was 1994.
I'm surprised they're not obligated to disclose that.
I haven't really pursued it. I've called and asked for it, and I haven't gotten it. I'm sure if I submitted an official request, they would have to give it to me. And they're looking, when the state does that, they're looking at the property as a whole. They're not looking at it individually.
Right.
So like I live in Hyde Park, and perhaps my property is only assessed at 50% of the total value, and somebody else's might be 60%. But we're all being, we all have the same equalization rate of 57.
So people with new construction are probably getting more.
Perhaps, yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thanks, Linda.
Okay, thank you.
This time we'll have a capital project planning update from Elliot Garcia.
My apologies, Dan and Zach. I meant for you to be first on the agenda. I am so sorry. When people travel, especially from far away, I try to put them first.
All right, good evening, all. This is going to be a rather brief update on the projects that are in progress, so I'm just going to touch on the couple of smaller scale projects that we have going on, and then we'll talk about the larger referendum project that's pending currently. So we've recently completed a bathroom renovation at Roosevelt High School. It was a $100,000 capital outlay project that was done this past June. We have another project pending for Haviland Middle School this year of similar scope and size. We have the well at North Park Elementary School, which is the domestic water system, motivated by some changes in compliance regulatory issues from the Dutchess County Department of Health. So in order to remain compliant, we're upgrading the domestic water system at North Park this current school year. So on to the big project, the one that was just passed in May. Our project team is currently working through the schematic design phase, and that's why our engineer and our architect are here in the room, and it makes me very comfortable to talk about things while they're here, because if there's any questions I can't answer, they're certainly available to us. But just to remind everyone here in the board and at home, when we approve a capital project, when we solicit approval for a capital project, we really only design about 10% of the project. We provide a framework with an intent of design before the referendum vote. Once the vote is approved, we really roll our sleeves up and get into the nitty-gritty of the design details, which have to be fully completed and submitted to the state for approval. So that's where we are now in the process. We did a little bit more than 10% on this project in particular, just because of the level of detail required by the age and specific design of our buildings, and then some of the nuanced work to what we were really trying to get out of the project. So at best, maybe 15 or 20% was done before May. That's probably being a little generous, but there's still a lot of work being done over the summer and into the fall to finalize and tweak that design. So what that means for the buildings individually is Roosevelt High School has taken up a lot of our conversational time. It has included representatives from the teachers and the faculty, the building administrators. We've constantly visited and revisited the design of the classroom layout, specifically the architectural work, to really make sure we're meeting the needs of students and staff. Zach and his team, as the engineers specifically, are working on the mechanical systems for heating and ventilation of the entire FDR High School, not just the pods that are being renovated. Also the historic section of Haviland Middle School, which, as many of you recall, was not included in the 2014 project, so that would complete fully Haviland Middle School, so we don't have to talk about heated Haviland anymore. Mr. Shaw, how are you? And the last building that we're doing is North Park Elementary School, and Dr. Rychik spoke about some indoor air quality issues, and really that these concerns that we have had for a couple of years now really spurred that conversation and the district leadership's team's prioritization of North Park above all other elementary schools due to concerns about how we heat and ventilate that building and overall condition the indoor air at North Park Elementary. So one of the interesting things about the project at North Park is that when we initially went out to vote in May, we had a pretty brief concept of replacing the system in kind with an updated version of that system that would improve indoor air quality, provide dehumidification, and do some other things for us to modernize the system. In the schematic design phase, our engineers and our architects, in working with the district's staff and consulting some other experts, really are re-examining the approach and looking at a possible system redesign to take a whole different approach at how that building is ventilated and treated. So obviously there's budgetary concerns with how that works, but we're really prioritizing that building and trying to see if there isn't a better way to do it than what we had originally planned even just less than a year ago. So a lot of time and effort's going into that. Specifically at North Park, a bit timely with the recent concerns going on, but further justification to make us spend the time and energy to make sure we get that one right. That's pretty much it as far as other parties involved. Our associates at Bernie Dunnigan's office, our financial advisors, have been on the phone with us regularly. They do reside in Rochester, so getting them physically here is kind of tough, but they do dial in regularly with our team. Our project team has been going at this weekly, if not bi-weekly, to make sure that everything is updated and at the forefront of conversation. Lou Rodriguez with the Palumbo Group is intimately involved as well, making sure that as these changes evolve, we are accounting for them with the project budget to keep us in line, on time, and under budget. The last thing I want to speak about, speaking of on time, is time. The New York State Department of Education is required to review every bit of our projects before we can start construction or put them even out to bid. Currently, the SED lead time for approval is hovering around 40 weeks, well, conservatively. So it really does affect our timeline. We anticipate, and these gentlemen are going to be back here in about a month to present the schematic design to the Board of Education and the public on September 27th, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yep, so September 27th, we'll be presenting all of the work thus far in terms of what the updated design looks like for all three locations. But that package has to be tweaked a bit and then goes up to SED for approval, and we expect it's going to take every bit of 40 weeks, if not longer, to get it back from SED, at which point, assuming there's no major modifications to it, we can go out to bid and start the bid process, the vetting process. All in, we anticipate that to take longer than it would from now to next summer, so it affects our schedule now. We're looking at a construction period of beginning in the summer of 2020 or thereabouts. That schedule will take us through the school year of 2021 and probably through the summer of 2021 as well. Again, the biggest factor in that is the lead time of approval of the State Department of Education. Some of you may be aware that the State Department of Education is offering a third-party expedited review. We'll put the word expedited in quotes because it has not been very expeditious as of late. The city BOCES in Oswego has been selected and did an RFP for third-party architectural firms to essentially review each other. So when projects get submitted to the state, they would outsource those that wanted to pay to play, would pay a fee based on the size of the project and have the opportunity to be reviewed by a firm outside of SED but approved by SED to give them a faster turnaround time. However, as part of the quality review process, SED has been going back and re-reviewing the third-party reviews to the tune of 20 to 30-week lead time on that expedited process. So we have discussed it. We've looked into it for the cost for the cost of the district to even try to get into that expedited queue. It would most likely still put us beyond any reasonable time frame to start our work next summer, and the project team has determined that to not be the best value for the district at this time. Realistically, if we can't start in June, starting in October doesn't matter much to us. We might as well wait till the following June. So in the interest of saving our money, it's better for us to plan accordingly and protract the timeline out just a little bit. That's pretty much it as far as my formal notes. Does anybody have any questions for me or for the gentleman sitting here?
Don't get 'em. So I had a question. Thanks for the update. In your bullet outline here under general notes, the last one, project team has calls pending with SED facilities planning to review recent capital projects and current anticipated project scope. For conflicts, what are you anticipating, or what are your concerns there?
I'll own that one. That's
Yep.
a little bit of me being here for a while and just making sure that we dot the i's and cross the t's. Dan's smiling at me because we've talked about this at length, specifically in the last 48 hours. We did a boiler project in 2013. We're doing a heating and ventilation system project now. Those naturally kind of lean into each other. When the board reviewed the initial proposed schematic design, the pre-referendum design, we talked about converting to a hydronic heating system, which means going from steam heat to hot water heat. There's a couple of different ways to do that. You can add equipment to the steam boilers that we paid for and built in 2013. There are options that could be more efficient where you actually convert how the boiler itself functions so that the boiler is making hot water and not just producing steam that's converted to hot water. So trying to keep the conversation pretty simplistic in terms of concept. There's a little bit more nuance to it, but the point is we want to make sure that the state understands that we're trying to make our building overall better and more efficient, but it does require touching something that they're still paying for. And when the state is still paying aid for a project, they can sometimes prorate the aid on the new project. So we just want to have a solid understanding of any potential issues of that kind given our recent projects. The good news so far is that the conversations that we've had have been positive. The boiler issue that I just used as an example, somewhat more complicated, and we're still working on that one. A more simple one is if we have to run pipes through a hallway, we have to take down a ceiling. We put the North Park ceiling up in 2014. So if we take that down in order to make the building breathe better, are they going to aid us on the new ceiling? And the answer we got back was most likely yes. We're trying to get all that confirmed in writing, so I don't want to commit to what the state says until the state actually writes it down and says it formally where I can share it with you. But these are the kind of conversations where we're looking at the last 15 to 20 years of projects. We looked at our all of the work related, anything that might touch something physically or systemically that we're doing, and make sure that the state understands why we want to do the new work within the 15-year window, and make sure that there are no issues. So far, the preliminary conversations have been positive, but we want to just put that out there to the board in the event that there may be a proration of, they may say, well, you still have 3 or 4 years to pay on this debt, so we're going to give you 85% of your aid, or what have you. And anything that does come up that way, we will disclose to the board at the time of submission to SED.
I will offer you results of the pay-to-play or the third-party review in a few months. Red Hook has just made the decision to go in that direction with the auditorium project. Information we're getting is saying that they're getting reviews through 60 to 90 days.
That would be helpful.
Which would be huge for us.
Wow.
I mean, that would mean that we could go out to bid this winter and be ready for spring construction.
That's from beginning to end?
Beginning to end. That's coming through the architectural firm that we're working with.
Come on up, Dan.
Dan,
Jump
come on
in.
up.
At the other end of the spectrum,
This is Dan Woodside from
And
CSR.
it's all
by the way.
speculation, you know, there's no guarantees in any of this.
That's great news. Just by way of an introduction, too, I just wanted to introduce Zach really quickly, because he has not met all of you. Zach is our lead mechanical engineer, professional engineer, also working on the project daily in a management capacity, so he's here all the time. We had a number of people here on Monday actually walking the buildings, and Zach was leading that crew along with Elliot's staff. Good news, I hope that works. What's happening, because we are one of the reviewing firms, and what's actually happening is that the state is not distributing these projects quickly enough. So we're seeing a log jam at the beginning of the process. Once it gets out to the reviewing firms, the review is pretty quick. It gets turned back to the state, and then as Elliot is mentioning, not every project, but several projects are being picked back up again, and engineers at State Ed are going through a full review again. If it is architectural heavy versus engineering heavy, we've seen them go more quickly also, and not even be picked up for a second time. So I think the jury's still out. It'd be great to hear what the results are for you, but the jury is certainly still out on whether that's a wise way to go or not. But I think we've got some time for that, because we'll be submitting to the state the beginning of the year in 2019, and we can make a decision at that point, so.
Good.
Thanks.
I have a question. You talked about the revamping of the way you're looking at doing the HVAC system at North Park. Does that include the possibility of a future, like setting it up in the future for a future capital project of being able to put air conditioning into that school?
Both systems
To help with
under.
the moisture, you know, I'm
Well-
thinking out.
Well, let me say, both systems that we're looking at include dehumidification.
I don't know what that means.
So taking the moisture out of the air.
Right, but I think Denise's
So-
question is the future for air conditioning
Yes, and then that's why,
compatibility.
you said the word, you touched on moisture, so I want to say both systems that we're putting in
Yes.
will remove moisture from the air, will reduce the level of relative humidity in the air.
Right, that I understand.
And both systems will be equipped to have future cooling added, should the board decide to go that route, or future board
future.
decide to go that route. Yeah, that's.
Okay, good.
And that was part of, when we talked about going with a hydronic system, a water-based system versus a steam-based system, is water-based systems are typically easier to convert for cooling in the future, or to add cooling to in the future. So that was part of the consideration even.
I thought so. I kind of remember talking about that a little bit, and that's for FDR as well.
That's for,
That's for everything we're doing.
And the new section of Haviland as well. I mean, they'll all be treated in such a way that they can have cooling added in the future without having to remove and replace substantial amounts of the existing system.
Thank you.
Sure.
I would add that I think that any HVAC project that we do now should, at some point,
Agreed.
our buildings are all going to be air conditioned. I mean, I think education in general is going to become a 12-month, at some point, is going to become a 12-month process. We're seeing, with climate change, we're seeing average temperatures rise. I can tell you that any HVAC project that I'm involved with, I will always push to put air conditioning, or at least have easy capacity to move to air conditioning. And that includes getting right down with the manufacturers to say, okay, how do I make this, you know, if you're not putting the DX coils in now, how do I put them in the future? Is it realistic? Are they a combined coil or a single coil? You know, really understanding what that conversion is going to be. Yeah.
12-month education will never get any construction done.
Yeah, it's true.
That's true. Thank you.
Oh, anytime.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, can I have a motion to open public participation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. If anybody would like to address the board, please go to the microphone. Okay, so please state your name.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Butler, and for the last 24 years, I have been a retiree in the Hyde Park School District, and prior to that, for 25 years, I drove a school bus. I'm here this evening because I understand that Dr. Rychek and the board have been discussing the issue with the Medicare check. Has there been a decision made at this time as to what to do?
Yes,
Technically,
dialogue. I mean-
yeah, are we supposed to wait and then close? I don't know if you want me to.
yes. We-
Sorry.
we-
We will answer you in a minute.
Yes, we have, the rules are, you ask the questions, and we have to wait till everyone's done asking, and then we will answer and
Oh.
close.
Fine, thank you.
Anybody else would like to address the board? Can I have a motion to close public participation?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Okay.
Now you-
You want to take this, Linda, or you want me? Sure.
So, hi, I'm Linda Steinberg, the business official. We did talk about that tonight, and we are going to send a letter out to all the CSEA retirees, asking them to bring in their 2018 statements, and if the amounts that they paid in Medicare are more than what we reimbursed, we will pay a retro check for that. And then going forward, we're going to request that each year we get those statements so we can pay the amount that was paid by the retiree.
So then it is your decision to go back to January of this year?
Yes.
And we have, okay.
Yes.
Then I want to thank the board for their time and consideration. We appreciate it, and thank you again for your help.
I think that means we got it right.
So at this time, we'll have subcommittee reports. Did anybody have a subcommittee meeting?
No.
I would like to talk a little bit about I've had a change in my situation, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to stay on all of my committees because I can't make daytime meetings. So if meetings can meet, like if we can do that, I'd like to stay on the Personnel Committee, since typically those, those are done in the evenings, in the early evenings, I can do those. But I'm afraid I don't think I can stay on the Policy Committee. I don't even know what else I signed up for, off the top of my head.
Yeah, so can we suggest that you send out an email?
Yeah, can we?
Of all
can we
the
do some-
vacancies that
yeah.
she's leaving, and what time time and frequency they convene, because
Okay.
that's
You're
important.
on the audit committee,
Which meets in the
Personnel.
evenings, okay, so I can continue.
and then the personnel, and the policy. Those are the three you're on.
Right, so unfortunately, I think it's the Policy Committee that I'm going to have to give up, since that meets mostly during the day, which is unfortunate, because I really do like that.
How many people do we have on the policy committee?
Only two. Well, now one.
There's no requirement for number. Let us take 1 minute. Who else is on the policy?
Doug.
Doug.
Well, I guess if someone's willing to jump in on the policy, the other thing we could do is look at the times of the policy. We could do either one.
Or if I can do it remotely, if I don't have to be present at the actual committee meetings, I'm happy to do something like that. I just wanted to put it out there that my schedule has changed.
Okay, we'll talk with Doug when he's
Okay.
back in town. Say, next is the most fun time of the year, the budget goals.
Board goals.
Board goals, not budget goals, sorry. Board goals. I would like for you to review all the goals and be ready for the next meeting to
Oh, okay.
break down and at least tackle the first, probably the first three. So really concentrate on the first three
Down.
and be ready to come back. So that is on academics, board administration, board and administrative operations, and budget and administration.
Last year's were on here.
So they should all, last year's goals should be in your the board docs,
That's where you are.
and then we'll talk about them. Okay, can I have a motion for consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Can I have a motion for 12.1, special education placements?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to mention that a review of the special education placements, it looks like we're going to entail the actual specification of 25 new students receiving services. Some of these would be preschoolers who are getting services, moving up to the school now and receiving services. The others represent recommendations of students that are in the school district that have exhibited issues that have been verified to require services, transfer students coming into the district who had previous service provided and confirming the fact that they still require those services. And I don't see much of a reason. It looks like a lot of them materialized from the June to August timeframe, so there's not much we can do about anticipating that. As far as numbers, I know we do plan for, based on prior years, for room for these students, but it does create a significant impact to the school district in placing these students and coordinating their placement so we don't overload. And my question to you is, have we gotten far enough to determine whether or not there's any need for a new section?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you.
I mean, we don't need another section at this time.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Can I have a motion for 12.2, contract with DC BOCES and AS7?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, can I have a motion for 12.3, intermunicipal agreement, SROs, with the town of Hyde Park?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, quick question. If I'm reading this correctly, do we only have SROs at the middle and high schools? Do we not have SROs at the elementary schools?
We don't, but they each cover the elementary schools on an as-needed basis. So it is not uncommon to see Marty at North Park, Tom at Ralph R. We usually go with the town of Poughkeepsie for Violet Avenue and have a very good relationship there, but our SROs go anywhere we need them at any time.
I would just encourage, I mean, I'm pretty well versed in the SRO program, and by all means, elementary school is a great place to have it used. It's not simply a policing process.
No.
So I think the younger that we get our students involved and comfortable with the SROs, I think that it will pay dividends later on. You know, I realize, you know, there's a lot of action going on in the middle schools and the high schools, but I do encourage us to get them down. And I mean, are they going into classroom settings for programs?
Not at the elementary, no.
Yeah,
We could
think-
consider in the budget season a roaming SRO for elementary where they do go in the classroom.
I think it can be just an assignment, you know, just a matter of assigning and making sure that we get them to spend
You mean
more
the
time.
existing ones?
Yeah, we've got two, you know,
Ah.
let's get, I think somebody should be looking at that. Somebody should
Okay.
be looking at it and finding opportunities to get SRO in a positive role in the elementary
elementary.
schools. Yep. I mean, we're coming up on a great one, Halloween.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
they have a great program.
Yep.
Or they should have. And that's the other thing, I didn't notice, are the SROs officially trained to the state program? Or are they just SROs in name?
No, they are officially trained.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that means that they are ready to go into the school, or the classrooms
Yeah.
with...
Yeah, and I love that idea, and I do have to say, we had an issue at North Park. It was not at all threatening, but I needed the SRO there, and I was absolutely amazed at how many students knew Marty and gave him the high five, and I can't agree with you more. Maybe we should embed it a little more regularly.
I think it'll pay. I think if the more we can get in the elementary school, the less we may need it.
Yeah.
Or think
yeah.
we need it in the high school and middle schools.
Yeah.
So, nothing better than seeing a first grader listening to a police officer read a book.
Yeah, great, I love it.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, can I have a motion for 12.4, the intermunicipal agreement for security at school events with the town of Hyde Park?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
There's no, is there a limit on this contract? I don't think I saw it. I think it was purely an hourly rate.
Yeah, under administrative content,
Okay.
we entered information on what we used this year. I believe it says in the contract that it's at the district.
Am I missing
Well,
something?
no,
I
it
don't
says
see-
that sporting events will go up, for this year, will go up to 8,000, and graduation, 3,000.
If we have used the same number of hours.
Oh. Oh, I see, yeah, that's how it ends. We do specify in the contract the number of games, so that's a known, and the only thing that would throw that off is if we wound up in some sort of championship, and, but we specifically tell them it'll be 4 football games and 9 basketball games. The other thing that can change that is that there are years we only have 3 home football games. We try for 4, but once in a while we only have 3.
So is that somewhere that I'm not seeing?
It's not in the
I don't know, it's in my
document,
hard
it's in the webpage under administrative content. Don't open the document.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that.
Do you see
like that.
administrative content, we use the
lines.
contract?
Oh, this, and that, okay, all right.
So
all
it
right,
projects
all
the
right.
cost.
Oh, I was looking
if it was
under
the same
executive
number as
content, I
this
see,
year.
okay. Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Any more discussion?
You're nigh on to terrific. You're not playing good, you're nigh on to terrific.
All those in favor? Opposed? Can I have a motion for 12.5, vendor agreement with BPD Financial Advisors?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, 12.6, vendor agreement with CBIZ Valuation Group, LLC.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Can I have a motion for 12.7, the vendor agreement with AIA CS Arch, capital project, post-ref, science labs, heating and ventilation.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
One question. So Linda, the fee is based on a percentage of the anticipated construction cost, correct?
Yes.
Is it adjusted on actual, or is it stay fixed on that projected? Does it then become a fixed value?
Yeah, it's fixed.
Okay, so we don't have any issues with a fee changing with change orders or
No.
modifications to
No.
the budget?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's fixed. They, attached is their calculation too. I don't know if you looked at that.
Yeah, I see it, but it's all based on the estimated
Yeah.
cost. I just want to make sure that it wasn't a moving target
Yeah.
based,
Yeah, and in the contract, it's just that dollar amount.
Yep.
That's what.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Can I have a motion for 12.8, vendor agreement with Pagonis O'Neill, Inc.?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Can I have a motion for 12.9, the confirmation of the tax rolls and authorization of the tax levy?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, remind the board that this is a document that has to be signed by each of us, so do not leave before you sign. Thank you.
Why didn't you tell us that before we voted?
Yeah, don't give us all of that.
Oh, I'm first?
You were first.
Does Doug have this one? You want my special pen?
You have a special pen?
I
like
do.
one that we...
Okay, at this time, we'll have public participation. Can I have a motion to open?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Closed? If there's anybody, it's another chance. If you would like to address the board, please go to the microphone.
Ask him to return the pen.
Okay, can we have a motion to close public
lost it.
participation?
I think everybody.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? At this time, I don't believe there's any other matters deemed necessary by the board. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.